welcome to Edison Open House Global Healthcare 2022. Now, in this session, we're looking at the work of Diurnal. It's a global pharmaceutical company headquartered in Wales that specializes in hormonal treatment for chronic hormonal conditions. And with me is their CEO, Martin Whitaker. Martin, hello.
Good morning, Vivian.
So tell me a bit more about your company, Diurnal.
So Diurnal was founded back in 2004 by Professor Richard Ross, Professor of Endocrinology at the University of Sheffield. And really the mission of the company is to develop hormone therapeutics to treat endocrine or hormone conditions where patient needs are going unmet. And really the ethos of Diurnal is that we spend a lot of our time speaking to physicians, to patients and to patient groups to really understand the unmet patient needs in endocrinology and then to create high quality products to address those needs.
And it's fair to say that some of these problems are rare, but collectively across the world, they're common, and that there is a real unmet need, as you suggest, because the treatments are really old-fashioned and haven't moved on.
That's absolutely correct, Vivian. I mean, if you speak to the majority of patients who we aim to treat, then often there's been very little innovation in the endocrine space for well over 50 or sometimes 60 years. Patients still using very old drugs, whereas our knowledge of the conditions and of what patients go through has increased no end during that time. And really Diurnal is trying to address that unmet need by coming up with more physiological and improved therapies for these patients.
Now, your drug Efmody was recently launched in the EU and in the UK. So can you tell me a bit more about Efmody, which I think was called something else, if I'm not mistaken, and what is its market opportunities?
So Efmody used to be called Chronocort, so the development name was Chronocort, and we've been developing Efmody now for well over 10 years, and we were delighted that in the middle of 2021 we had Efmody approved by the European Medicines Agency, and then shortly after that we had Efmody approved by the UK regulator, the MHRA. I'm very pleased to say that Efmody has subsequently been launched both in Europe and in the UK. So what is Efmody? So Efmody is a modified release hydrocortisone that is used in the treatment of a rare endocrine condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH for short. And in this condition, it's a very serious condition where patients cannot produce the hormone cortisol, which is essential for life. And these patients face two issues. Firstly, they need to have their cortisol replaced because they don't produce it because of this genetic enzyme block that causes the condition. And secondly, because cortisol, the body cannot make cortisol, then the building blocks of cortisol, harmful androgens or sex hormones, build up in the patient's body, causing harm. And what Efmody has been proven to do in this patient group, and that's adults and adolescents aged 12 years and above, is that we've shown that firstly, we can recreate the natural physiological rhythm of cortisol that is absent in these patients. And secondly, that we're able to control these androgens down to levels that are found in healthy individuals across the whole 24-hour period. And the European Medicines Agency has said that this is the first physiological-based treatment for patients suffering from congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Yes, we should say perhaps that hormones aren't released in kind of one burst as would be simulated by giving an injection, say, but actually they're released in little packets all through the day and at specific times of the day as well, which I suspect is reflected in your company's name, Diurnal.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I think, using this disease of cortisol deficiency, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, is an excellent example, Vivian, The cortisol rhythm is probably one of the most distinct daily rhythms that we have in our body, or diurnal rhythms, if you like to call it. The rhythm in healthy individuals is low at night, enabling you to get to sleep. Then cortisol levels begin to rise from around 3 o'clock in the morning and peak on or just before waking to really prepare the body for the day ahead in terms of your energy and glucose metabolism, and then decrease throughout the day, reaching a nadir before you go to sleep. And Efmody, given twice a day in what we call a toothbrush regimen, lasting at night, first thing in the morning, can approximate this rhythm in this particular patient group.
Now, how big is the market opportunity? I've said that the disease is these conditions are rare, but actually collectively they're quite common.
That's correct, Vivian. So in terms of the market opportunity, certainly in Europe, we believe the opportunity is around 250 million US dollars per annum. That's the total opportunity. And the opportunity in the US is around $100 million per annum. I think it's important to note, and as you highlight, Vivian, that congenital adrenal hyperplasia is not the only disease of cortisol deficiency. There are other causes, namely a disease called Addison's disease, a disease that afflicted President John F. Kennedy, and other causes of cortisol deficiency, which actually make up a quite significant $3 billion US dollar market opportunity, both in Europe and in the US. And it's now Diurnal's ambition to explore further uses of Efmody in these wider conditions of cortisol deficiency.
And what about specific plans for Efmody in the US? Where are you with those?
So in the US, we're progressing extremely well. We've been in discussion with the US regulator, the FDA, for a prolonged period of time. I'm very happy to say that over the summer of 2021, we achieved written guidance from the FDA in the form of special protocol assistance, which really sets out the design for the pivotal phase 3 trial that we need in the US to secure Efmody approval for congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And I'm very pleased to say that in December of 2021, so just before the year end, we initiated our first clinical trial site in the US, and we're expecting to recruit our first patient into that study soon. And we would anticipate a readout from that study in the first half of 2024.
Now, you've also got a couple of other interesting products, Alkindi and DITEST. Tell us a bit more about those.
Yeah, so sticking with diseases of cortisol deficiency and with our product Alkindi, which was approved in Europe some time ago, back in 2018. And more recently, it was approved in the US in 2020. And the treatment needs in kids that suffer from these diseases of cortisol deficiency, including the genetic disease congenital adrenal hyperplasia, are different to those than in adults. And the real challenge in children, particularly young children from birth with these diseases, was that although the active ingredient hydrocortisone has been around for over 60 years, nobody ever applied for the pharmaceutical license to treat kids with these diseases from birth, either in Europe or in the US. So Alkindi is an immediate release hydrocortisone given as a granule or a sprinkle that can be administered onto the child's tongue or directly onto food, and simply replaces the cortisol that the patient is missing. And we are the first company to have a licensed product, both in Europe and the US. And in that respect, we have first mover advantage with the Alkindi product. In terms of our pipeline, we have an exciting program around male hypergonadism, so that's low testosterone in men. And we're progressing a product called DITEST, which is an oral native testosterone, which has successfully completed phase 1 clinical trials in our target patient group, so men with low testosterone here in the UK. And on the basis of those results, we have approached the FDA, who have agreed the route to market through to a new drug application will be via the 505(b)(2) route, so very much an abbreviated route to market there. And where we are at the moment is we're planning further clinical trials in the US and just about to submit our IND to the FDA during this month of January 2022.
So it sounds like you've got a very busy year ahead. What specifically should investors look out for as milestones during the coming year?
So in terms of milestones for investors, Vivian, clearly we have now launched Efmody. Alkindi is already launched in Europe and the US, so investors should look at progress of both of those products. Obviously, COVID headwinds permitting, these are specialty products that are prescribed in hospitals. And as anybody knows, during the COVID pandemic, getting into hospitals has been particularly challenging for our patients, but we continue to see good growth in those products, and investors should look out for that. And then beyond that, with the clinical trials that I've mentioned that are starting in terms of these exciting line extension opportunities for Efmody and our pipeline opportunities in DITEST, these trials will be starting shortly to recruit patients both in the US and in Europe, and certainly the line extension study for Efmody should read out in Europe by the end of 2022, and the DITEST study, we're also hopeful that will read out by the end of 2022 in the US.
It does indeed sound like an exciting year. Martin Whitaker, CEO of Diurnal, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much, Vivian.